Let's say the Mayor Pete is more interested in talking about whether highways are racist and diversity, equity, and inclusion than focusing on the nuts and bolts of transportation.
The general yields back. The gentleman from North Carolina is now recognized for 5 minutes.
So, Professor Hammond, I've listened with interest to the number of times that the East Palestine derailment has been invoked. Do I understand that this existing regime of rulemaking under the Administrative Procedure Act through the administration is susceptible to influence from special interests?
Yes, that's why I think that Representative Jayapal's approach is a good one.
So the conclusion that she draws is it would be a bad idea to reinvigorate Congress's participation in the making of the necessary rules because there would be political influence in Congress. But there's political influence in the rulemaking process under the APA, isn't that right?
Would the gentleman yield because you are speaking about me?
No, I won't.
Well, you're implying things that I did not say.
I'm talking about your question,
But
which stands for, I'm not arguing with you, it's my time.
Okay, but please
It's my time.
Please don't
Would
say
you respect
what
the order of the committee, please?
The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized. It's his time.
Mr. Chairman, if
He has not impugned the other member or her motives.
Can I have time back on my, I've been interrupted about 30 seconds
yeah,
of
the
time
gentleman
by
will get an
disorder from
additional,
the other side of the aisle, Mr. Chairman. Could I have my time back?
Gentleman will receive
Chairman,
an additional 30 seconds.
procedural question.
The committee's not in order, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I raise a point of order, Mr. Chairman. I would raise a point of order. Does a member of the committee have a right to correct?
What rule?
I'm raising a point. I'm asking you to rule on a point of order. Does a member of the committee, or a point of parliamentary inquiry, does a member of the committee have the ability to correct a misstatement of a question that was posed by one member? Because without the ability to correct that, a witness is then going to be invited to respond to something she didn't say, which seems sort of Alice in Wonderland-ish and maybe not a great practice. So is she permitted to seek that be corrected before the witness answers?
The member may ask for the other member to yield, but the member is not required to yield. If a written statement wants to be submitted, we'll accept that.
Okay, thank you.
The gentleman from North Carolina is now recognized again, and he'll have an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm not sure how it stands to reason if allegedly the administrative process has been susceptible to political influence, that would be a distinct or different set of circumstances if Congress instead were making the laws. Can you explain why that's one? It would be present in one and not the other, given what you've talked about East Palestine and the federal regulations on transportation?
Sir, I have not said that corporate influence is present in one and not the other, and I very much am of the mind that there can be improvement in both branches. One of the differences in the administrative branch is that at least we have more transparency, which becomes opaque were the REINS Act to go into effect.
Is it possible that the East Palestine derailment occurred because of enforcement, because of administrative incompetence? That is to say that, let's say the administration, let's say the Mayor Pete is more interested in talking about whether highways are racist and diversity, equity, and inclusion than focusing on the nuts and bolts of transportation. So you see things like this crop up. Is that possible?
Sir, I'm not aware of facts that support that assertion.
No, I didn't ask if you were aware of, I asked if it's a possible set of reason contributing. In fact, do you have any evidence that it was caused by the lack of a particular regulation rather than the administrative distraction?
I do understand that one of the possible failures in that wreck, and I believe the investigation is still underway, is equipment that appears to be completely unregulated.
Okay, so it's possible. Either one seems possible to me. I pulled up quickly the Administrative Procedure Act has been in force since 1946. The 5 volumes of regulations on transportation in Part 49 of CFR totals 4,634 pages. how can, if that's the case, I mean, that is the state of affairs. And what I understand is they're arguing that East Palestine is an example of why we need to maintain that. How many pages of regulations would be necessary in the transportation part so that we wouldn't have things like East Palestine?
I can't give you a page number, but from having been involved in writing regulations, it just takes a little bit of work to set forth all of those technical details that are important to clearly understand what is expected and to clearly present the protections that are necessary.
You testified, as I was going back and forth and listening on audio remotely, at some point you testified that if we had fewer regulations, it would do harm to the economy, right? Are you an economist?
I'm not an economist, but I read the cost-benefit analyses that agencies prepare for their OIRA review, and in those, you can see the extraordinary benefits to the economy of many protective regulations.
So you haven't felt it an impediment to your forming that conclusion or that opinion based on reviewing the expertise of others. You haven't found it to be an impediment that you lack a specific expertise in the area, right?
It's written reasonably well so that most educated people can understand.
And all of this expertise that exists in all these magnificent agencies can be drawn upon by Congress, by committees just like this, to be advised upon whether a particular rule ought to be made a law. Isn't that true? In the same way you formed your conclusion from inputs by experts.
I'm not sure I understand the question, sir.
Okay. Do you understand the question, Mr. Wolfson? Do you have a thought about it?
I believe that this body or any other body of Congress would be able to call experts from across industry, from the academy, others who are experts who have worked on these areas for a long time, whether they are in the government or outside of the government, and could gain the expertise in the same way that the regulatory agencies attempt to do through the notice and comment process.
All right, my time's expired. Thanks.